Holly Robinson Peete captures a truth that many mothers live daily. There's a unique courage and resilience in raising children whose path look different than most. Welcome to the Invisible but Powerful Show, where we celebrate the extraordinary journeys and the women who walk them. In this episode, we'll hear stories that remind us that no matter the challenges, love and hope can light the way. Stay tuned for an inspiring episode on the Invisible but Powerful Show.
Welcome to Invisible but Powerful, where heart, soul, and spirit intertwine. This show is about sharing stories of faith, resilience, and transformation to inspire you to uncover, unlock, and unleash the incredible potential God has placed within you. Now, let's get ready for real talk and heart-to-heart conversations on the Invisible but Powerful Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Invisible but Powerful Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Kiner, and today's episode is entitled Mothering Extraordinary Children. In recognition of Autism Month, we're highlighting the strength, the insight, and the perseverance that it takes to nurture children with unique challenges, whether it's autism or reactive attachment disorder or RAD, ADHD, or any other special needs. As a mother myself, I know the journey of parenting that can be both rewarding and incredibly challenging. Sometimes I feel like I'm navigating a whole new world, and I'm sure any parent would feel that way when you're parenting a child with special needs. I know for me, I felt really heartbroken watching how other children reacted to my son's excitable behavior or snickered at how he read words that actually weren't on the page, only later to realize that not only did he have ADHD, but he also had dyslexia. He had visual processing disorders. He had a host of disorders, and I couldn't even imagine how he felt in a world that was labeling him as abnormal. Yet through all of this, I realized the importance of having a community around me. I realized I wasn't alone in this. Today, we're joined by two amazing guests, each either mothering or has mothered a child with unique challenges. Let's meet our first guest, Dr. Tanya Manning-Yard. Tanya is a poet and a freelance writer from New York City. She's a graduate of Rutgers University and the University of Albany. She's a seasoned editorial professional with over a decade of experience in manuscript and dissertation editing, in project management and scholarly writing, and is also an author of a collection of poems entitled Every Watering Word. She serves as president of the board at the Peel Center, a nonprofit advocating for families with children with disabilities. Tanya also produces Father, Son, Galaxy, a family-friendly podcast and YouTube channel celebrating stories, creativity, and intergenerational connection. Beyond her professional roles, she is also a proud mother of two amazing boys, one of whom is on the autism spectrum. She incorporates her younger son into the show through Storytime with Maceo, a segment dedicated to inspiring a love of reading and storytelling among neurodiverse learners. Okay, take a look at this short clip of Storytime with Maceo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Manning-Yard, producer of Father, Son, Galaxy, and welcome again to another episode of Storytime with Maceo. I'm here with our son, Maceo. Maceo, say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And we're reading today another of Maceo's favorites. Hi, baby.
Yeah, Miss Clever.
Hi, Boom Boom. We're reading another of Maceo's favorites titled Frosty the Snowman. It started with the snow. It was the kind of snow that made happy people happier and giddy people giddier. It even made friends out of enemies. It was the first snow of the season, and it fell on the day before Christmas. When the first snow is also a Christmas snow, something magical is bound to happen. The children at school wanted to be outside playing in the snow. Instead, They were in class watching a magician named Professor Hinkle try to perform magical tricks. Messy, 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 Professor Hinkle grumbled. His magic tricks were not working. So he threw his hat in the trash can. Luckily, his rabbit, Hocus Pocus, rescued it.
Wasn't that amazing? Now, some of you may know and some of you may not know that Tanya is not only a longtime friend, but she is also one of my editors of the book, Invisible but Powerful. Let's welcome my very special guest, Dr. Tanya Manning Yard. Welcome, Tanya. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Kimberly. It was great to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're so humble right now. It's so amazing.
I'm a little nervous.
I gotta lavish in this moment.
Because I'm quiet?
Yes.
But thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
Oh, well, you know, I know that we've talked about that journey of mothering special needs children. Can you talk about your journey, where it all began for you? Like, when did you first start noticing the signs of your younger son?
It started when he was around 18 months, where he still had not met certain milestones in terms of walking on his own, speaking, and in slight departure when we were looking at like our older son Keith. By age 2, Keith was already walking by age 1, like running around and everything, and he also demonstrated an interest and an aptitude already in writing, wanting to learn how to write, and also reading. So he initially set for us benchmarks around, well, this is what we were expecting our kids to be like, where once Maceo was showing signs of perhaps lagging cognitively and in terms of his motor skills, that's where it raised concern for us. And we brought those concerns to our pediatrician, who, at first reassured us that, children develop at their own pace. Some may hit their milestones quicker than others. And we kind of just wanted to kind of wait and see. But we decided, and actually it was Kerwin that really pushed about, we need to get him tested just to be sure. And that can be a kind of scary place for any parent to be, because like, what happens once we find out the diagnosis, and what do we do once we have the diagnosis? So needless to say that at age 3, Maceo was tested and was diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum, as well as having speech delay. And that is where our journey began. I can share that when we got that diagnosis, you feel like your stomach drop and the ground and the world fall from underneath your feet. But process is product. And that began our journey of learning to love and support our son on his terms, while also helping to navigate and advocate for his rightful place in this shared world.
So how was it? Because I know for me, when I received the diagnosis of my older son having not only ADHD, but he had dyslexia, and he had a host of different disorders regard to visual learning and all of these different disorders. I felt as a mom that I failed in some way. Were there any challenges that you faced or that you thought of? Did you kind of internalize that as a mom as well?
I did. Because in part, one of the things I wanted to do with both of my boys was to raise them the way my mom raised me. So, and you knew my mom. So being able to like homeschool, and I had the curriculum, that and having been an ELA teacher, I already knew what I wanted to do in terms of helping both of the boys become literate, and also to, infuse them a love of reading. But then realizing that Maceo learns differently and needs different supports, and at the time I didn't know what those supports were. I did feel like such a failure, and it wasn't with not having love and earnest and passion, but I just didn't have tools. Like, how do I navigate helping this child learn, feel affirmed,
and feel deserving of a rightful place in this world. And as I'm sure you've experienced, then advocating for them within academic settings like school. Um, Preschool was a challenging experience. Ironically, we were living in a school district that provided preschool for specifically for children on the spectrum. So they actually created a preschool to amass the kids who had the diagnosis as a way to then start acculturating them to school. Um,
Okay.
that experience was challenging because um, it felt in many instances like a deficit model. These are the things your child is not able to do or has a hard time doing. And a lot of behavioral focus. Like we would get reports like Maceo took his shoes off 125 times in one day,
Mm.
or Maceo is mucusy. You need to come and bring and take him out of school, or just a constant focus on the things that will come with the package in terms of having a child on the spectrum. But when we were pressed with our questions like, how is he doing with making friends? How is he understanding how to socially relate? Can he count? Does he know his alphabet? And how can we support and be partners in supporting you at the school? It felt many
Right.
times we were receiving kind of like punitive data. These are the things he did wrong. He didn't do well, etc.
Mm.
And it didn't make for a very positive experience. We were fortunate that we had two therapists, one who was his speech therapist and one who was his ABA therapist, who provided like affirmation, love, kindness, demonstrated ambition in supporting him, high expectations. If he didn't necessarily meet a benchmark, then they would redirect and then scaffold him to be able to achieve those benchmarks, incorporating Keith in the process to support him as a brother, supporting his sibling who's on the spectrum. And so those years were challenging in terms of navigating the diagnosis and getting the support and
Mm-hmm.
also becoming acculturated to the institution of school. But at the same time, anyone who meets Maceo, you also see one of the most loving, wonderful children you could ever meet in life. And I'm not just saying that
Mm-hmm.
because he's my son. He is, in many respects, a light in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to learn to also love him on his terms. The things he does, his smiles. He loves water and loves water play. The ways in which he may stem, orally or needing like kind of sensory input. So he loves hugs. A funny thing did happen, and I say funny looking back now, is that Maceo,
Mm-hmm.
as in the case with many children, did not sleep through the night. So at that time, he
Mm.
was like around 2, and the only way he would go to sleep at night is if I literally laid his head on my chest. So him feeling like my heartbeat would help him sleep.
Oh,
So
wow.
sometimes I'd have to get him, go in the living room so that we wouldn't disturb other people, like Keith and Kerwin. And I would just
Mm-hmm.
lay on the couch and lay him on my heart, and then he would fall asleep. And that nocturnal inconvenience, if you will, was actually one of the ways I learned the importance of bodily bonding with
Mm-hmm.
my child,
Wow.
in an unspoken language that we do even to this day with lots of hugs and kisses and affirmations. Um, and, as I'm sure we'll go later in the interview, there have been other great experiences, such as the ones he's had in elementary school and now at his current private school that I can
Right.
speak more to. But that's what the
Right.
early years were like.
Right. So that was going to be my next question because I know you talked about the therapy.
Hmm.
Now, was this therapy the therapists that were used to um, help him to be progressive or helped him to be better?
Hmm.
Actually, was that provided by the school or was that an external resource?
Those are external resources. So these happened after school. So
Oh,
twice a week, I would actually take Maceo to his speech therapist office to work with him one on one. And 2 to 4 times a week, depending on the schedule, we had a BCBA that would come to our home and work with Maceo as well as with Keith directly. And, go ahead. Mhm.
okay. So was this part of the IEP where they come to your home, or did they also provide these resources in school?
They provided these resources in school also. So he worked with an occupational and speech therapist at his
Okay.
preschool. And as well as because we had at that time also private insurance to provide supplemental support through our health insurance for Maceo to receive services at no cost to us, thankfully. Mm-hmm.
So that's a good thing.
Yes.
Now, what about because you talked about his earlier years. Now, I did see a posting on Instagram where he said about he's 12. Is he 12? Or
He's
12, right?
He's 12.
Can you believe it?
No.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it.
He is 12.
He's 12. He'll be a teenager soon.
Oh, tell me about it.
So how is it now that he's older? Do you see a shift in his behavior? Do you see the maturity? Do you see a change there?
I do, and I want to give credit in part to school as well as community. So when we moved from West Orange to King of Prussia and was a part of that school district, Maceo attended a phenomenal elementary school. So I will name them Gulf Elementary School. Fantastic. He was in the special education track. So he was separated from, and I want to say separated, but he was in self-contained classrooms, but had opportunities to take general ed classes with his neurotypical classmates. So they didn't just keep him in a self-contained classroom all day. And every one of his teachers, oh my gosh, I love them. They worked with him from kindergarten through 4th grade, believing in him. And I think that's one of the most important things that I really want to stress, because he also was, at the time, he was one of the children that experienced the pandemic, and that disruption, I know has set a lot of children back, including Maceo, but a lot of the strides he has made has been to these teachers that, regardless of the circumstance, believing and investing in him. And not only his special education or the autism support teachers, but also other staff, including one music teacher, her name is Katie Langer, who believed that Maceo could learn to play music. And in collaboration with the administration, she worked with Maceo early in the morning each day at school for about 15 minutes, teaching him different musical instruments. So she taught him the cello, piano, xylophone. And we have so many wonderful pictures and videos of her working with him, as well as working with him in our home, as well as being one of the liaisons into the church we currently attend that has a buddy program for children and adults with disabilities.
Wow.
So that families can worship in church together as well. So I want to say, I'm saying that to say, Maceo thrived in that environment. They took the different grade levels, took all the kids on trips. So Maceo visited the library, the mall, Santa, fire stations, went apple picking and hay riding, went to iFly. So when they do like those, you can like have a parachute set on and like go weightless into the air. There was just so many things that this school team and the therapists in the school and the teachers did with, and the administration did with Maceo, that I'm just wanting to make sure to illustrate the power of collaboration with schools that don't treat children who have disabilities and special needs. They don't treat them as a deficit model or a punitive model.
Right.
And so that is why I think in many ways Maceo has begun to thrive. The fact that he even performed with the orchestra, the school orchestra, unheard of. And it's not to say that Maceo was perfect, in terms of he's not playing at the level of neurotypical counterparts, but that didn't stop his teacher or the staff as a whole from still investing in him. Just as any student, any teacher should invest in any child with a belief in possibilities, regardless of any impediments, physical or invisible, that child may have. And so I'm seeing now a child who was not treated in ways that were always punitive thrive. Maceo is loving, kind, smart, savvy, strategic. And it's not to say he still does not have certain, triggers and behavior, aberrant behaviors, but I really feel like his elementary school has made an incredible difference. And in the private school that he's now in, where it is a full infusion of therapies, both in the educational context as well as support therapies, occupational and speech, I see Maceo thriving, Maceo reading, Maceo being self-sufficient, brushing his teeth, putting his clothes on, packing his own book bag, knowing how to feed himself, bathe himself, even to the point where when we had his last IEP, we put it out there both with the church support staff that we work with, as well as the school, that the next thing we want to start working towards is preparing Maceo for baptism. And we want to prepare him both spiritually and intellectually to cognitively understand the concept of baptism.
Right.
And
that would be amazing.
And we're in you know why it's amazing, Kimberly? Because we're in a place where we're around people who believe the possibilities are there, and why not harp on them? To the point when we had the IEP meeting at his school, the parent support staff there said, why don't you write social stories, and we'll use those social stories to model for Maceo, and who knows, you could even publish them. I was like,
nice.
Right. And we're working with the coordinator at the church to think of ways in terms of grant writing and also resources to improve the buddy program there as well. So I'm saying all that to say that Maceo's growth, because of the investment others have put in him, with the belief of what he can do, has also propelled us in thinking of ways that we as parents and community members can also continue to support initiatives, big or small, so that all children, neurodiverse and neurotypical, can have their potential actualized and done in ways that are safe and done in ways in which people believe in a greater good in such children as well. So I could go on and on and on.
Going on and on and on. What advice would you actually give to the parents who, like you said, you received that diagnosis for the first time? What advice would you give to those parents?
That is such a great question. One is to find community. Sometimes one can feel that there's a stigma attached to when your child is not like other children, that you would prefer to hide them. There may be shame, embarrassment. Why isn't my child like everybody else? And I would say that's at the time when you really need to find your community that much more. So one of the things that helped us to give context is meeting Linda Moser, who created a program called SNAP, Special Needs Athletic Adaptive Program. And it was something that she created herself as the parent of children with special needs and provided within the Upper Marion community, where children with special needs could then be partnered with high school students. And that was like an opportunity for, like, on Saturdays to learn things like swimming, soccer, just general physical activities, and it allowed all of us as parents and families with children with disabilities to come together, and one, our children have fun, and two, us recognize other parents who are going through the same thing. And that's why I think it's very important to try to find community, because it's easy to kind of like hide in the shadows. The other I would say is also for us, it was to pray and to center, because it's easy to get downtrodden by when bad things happen because you have a child with disabilities. And by that, I mean the circumstances that happened in school and the challenges that came with that. We also at the time were living with neighbors who, some were very tolerant, very supportive. Others were not. And we had an instance where our neighbors called the police on us because Maceo was making too much noise. And you need to have, speaking for us, a spiritual grounding that you are more than your circumstance, but you have to call on a higher power to help you remember that, because it's very easy to get beaten down by other people's words and internalize that as truth, that if you don't have a recourse for calling on a higher power or grounding in something other than other people's reactions or your immediate circumstance, it is a hard journey to be the parent of a child with a disability. So I would suggest those two things. And the other is to be brave. It is not an easy journey to be a parent of a child with a disability or multiple disabilities. And it's easy to shrink, but if you don't speak for your child, no one else is coming.
No one will
speak for them. And
that's true.
You have to hold other people's feet to the fire, particularly those who are responsible for fulfilling an IEP, to make sure that they fulfill the IEP. They may be experts in terms of their expertise, but you are the expert on your child. So it is very important to make your expectations known and to do that in partnership, to be that parent that is trying to meet school school administration, teacher, staff, and other interest holders to make yourself available to collaborate around a child's needs, but also to not be afraid of conflict. Because sometimes some of the best things that'll happen for your child come from the clashing of heads, if you will. And you have to be brave in doing that because that child has picked you to be their parent.
Right.
So you
Right.
need to be the best parent you can be for that child and to be unafraid of advocating for them because you are
Beautiful.
all they have. So I would say those
Beautiful.
two things.
That's beautiful. So as we close, in 1 or 2 words, what does invisible but powerful mean to you
Mm,
in regards to your journey?
mm. Can't tell me 1 or 2 words. You know
1 to 2 words, Tanya, not a book.
Okay, 1 or 2 words. We're going to talk offline about that question. I would say resilience and steadfastness. Hmm.
Mm.
That's what
Okay.
that phrase means to me. Yes.
Okay. All right. Resilience and steadfastness, and that's a reflection of your journey. Very nice.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Where can where can our listeners find resources or connect with you for more insight?
Sure. To connect directly with me, I am on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and I go by TMY Chronicles or Tanya Manning Yard. Type in either one, and they'll pop up on those social media platforms.
Okay.
For Father Son Galaxy, our family podcast, you can find us at Father Son Galaxy on Twitter, Blue Sky. You can also find me on Blue Sky too. Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. Resources, one of the best resources that is out there in terms of providing support to parents. I would highly recommend the Peel Center. And I don't just say that because of my affiliation, but it's an incredible organization that is geared towards supporting children, young adults, and families, and therapists, other interest holders, geared towards advocacy for people with disabilities. And it provides a plethora of resources and programs and staff that you can talk with to help navigate the journey for your loved one with disabilities. Another resource that I would recommend, though is based in New Jersey, is Nadine Wright Abubaker's organization called Naissan's Place. And it's a phenomenal program that helps families with children who are on the autism spectrum in terms of navigating access to resources and also just having a great family resource. And Nadine is just such a phenomenal mom and advocate. So I would
Does she have a website? Because
Yes,
maybe I can put that.
naisansplace.org. But you can also look up
Naissansplace.org.
Naissan's Place, NASSAN' place,
Okay.
online. And she's just a talented, tenacious, loving, passionate, and accessible. And that's what you need in navigating this journey, for sure. So those are the resources I can think right off the top of my head.
Nice. Very nice. Well, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening, but you're always an inspiration to me. Thank you so much for being on the show. Make sure after that you log into Zoom so that the audience can ask any further questions that we didn't get to cover in this episode.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kimberly, for inviting me. Thank you also for creating this platform to bring people like us together. You're so talented. You're so resourceful. You're so spiritual, and you're so necessary in these times that we find ourselves. And thank you for creating this platform for availing yourself and creating community where we can discuss these experiences and use them as a tool for learning and for a greater good. Thank you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. We will talk later. I'm sure you'll be on another episode. Maybe talking about a different topic, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kimberly.
But thank you again.
Thank you, Kimberly.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
Now, before we continue, let me take a moment to talk about my devotional book, Invisible but Powerful. If you've ever felt unseen but long for deeper encouragement, this book offers real life testimonies, real life stories, and weekly lessons to remind us of our inner strength. Take a look at this promo.
Have you ever felt like life's challenges have left you searching for hope? Invisible but Powerful isn't just a devotional. It's a lifeline for women navigating their toughest moments. Filled with heartfelt stories, scriptures, and reflections, this book is inspiring women to rediscover their strength and faith. It's time to uncover your inner strength, unlock your potential, and unleash a life filled with purpose. Scan the QR code now, or go to Amazon.com to purchase and begin your journey today. You don't have to face life's challenges alone. Let Invisible but Powerful guide you every step of the way.
Welcome back to the Invisible but Powerful show, and we are talking about mothering extraordinary children. Our next guest is Tina Still. Tina is no stranger to this show. She was actually a prior participant in one of our prior episodes, episode 4, Finding Love After Loss, where she talks about her start of becoming a foster mom shortly after the loss of her husband and unborn babies. So in this episode, Tina will dive more into her experience of being a foster mom, caring for a child with reactive attachment disorder, or RAD. Help me welcome back to the show, Tina Still. Welcome,
Hello.
Tina.
Hello, welcome. Welcome back, I guess. So thank you for having me back.
Welcome back to the show, Tina. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
So, in the prior episode, like I said, you talked about how you became a foster mother, specifically after the loss of your husband and the many miscarriages that you had, the loss of your unborn babies, and then you became a foster mom. You became a mom in a different way. So, one of the things that you talked about in detail is the challenges of mothering your younger foster son with RAD. So tell us about, let's go back and talk about what RAD is.
Sure.
It's called reactive
Attachment disorder is my shirt. I'm a reactive attachment warrior.
So talk a little bit about what RAD is, reactive attachment disorder.
So RAD is a trauma-based disorder. Usually some sort of trauma happened to the child before the age of 5. And whatever it is, it puts them stuck in a fight or flight syndrome. So there's a quote up there that I have there saying, I'm in an abusive relationship that I'll never walk away from. And so for this child, love was his trigger. And so the more I tried to love him, the more he would fight me. And usually with RAD, there's a target. So for this particular child, the target was the person in the mother role. So whoever is in that mother role was going to catch that RAD, that reactive response. So what was strange with my foster son is that nobody else saw it half the time. Like everybody was like, oh, he was so good. He's so sweet. But the second the two of us were alone, I was the one who would end up seeing it. I was the one who was ending up catching it because I was the target. Wow. With RAD, he was so sweet and so charming, outside of the home. There's just a whole lot, and I'll go into what I started to notice. I think that it's better to just tell the story than to kind of just go through bullet points on a slide, but that's the ultimate nexus of Brad. It is a trauma-based disorder where the child gets stuck in fight or flight mode, and there's a target, and that target is usually the person in the mother role.
The person in the mother role. So
Yes.
it wouldn't affect the fathers?
It could. I'm not saying that it never does. It could. What I noticed is that my son, Christian, he, when he first came to me, I mentioned that he was very fatherly like to his younger brother. And so the younger brother, and I'm going to give him a nickname that I've always called him on Facebook. I call him Mr. Sweetface.
Yes.
Mr. Sweetface listened to his big brother. So his big brother could tell him to stop, no, whatever, and he'd listen to him, no problem. I would do the same exact thing, and there was all out tantrum, all out, prior issues. And if I said to him, I'm going to tell your brother, or if I recorded him so that his brother could see, he would automatically stop because he respected his brother. But when it came to just the two of us, I was the one who caught most of the reaction.
That's interesting.
It was very interesting.
How old was he at that time?
So so when when he first came into my home, he was 2 years old. He was a sweet, lovable, fun, very energetic. Only the issue that I had with him is that I couldn't take my hand off of his hand. Like if we're out in public, if I let him go, he would take off and try to run. But outside of that, in the house, we had a great relationship when he was 2. He left at 3. After a year, the department, DCP&P, they have to make a decision on what the permanent position is going to be for the children. And so while my son wanted to be adopted, the 3-year-old, Mr. Sweetface, was too young to make that decision. And so they did reunify him back with his parents. And then a year later, his biological mother, same mother as Christian, she went unresponsive in front of him and then passed away a couple of weeks later. I don't know if that was a trauma or if there were other things that caused the trauma, but because it was there and she was in front of him, I'm likely assuming that was probably the trauma that started it. And then at that point, DCP&P decided that they wanted him back in foster care and called me and asked me if I would take him. And so, of course, I said yes.
So Rad, you didn't experience the Rad when he was there the first time when he was 2?
No, I did not.
Okay.
So when he came back to me, he had just turned 5. His birthday was January 9th. He came back to me in February. And it was February of 2020. So right after that, February 2020, March 2020 was COVID. And so we were all on lockdown. And so I got to spend 24/7 with both him and Christian, and that's when I started noticing that he was different. Things started happening, that, made me go, that's peculiar. And you don't know whether it's, just a 5-year-old doing 5-year-old things or if it's something more. So like the first weekend he came home, he put laundry detergent in my furnace, causing the furnace to break down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. That was the first thing. Then I started noticing him stealing food and hiding it in his room, lying when he knew that I knew the truth. Like he would still lie, like no matter what, he was never going to tell me the truth. Little things like that. Then the behavior started to get a little bit more serious. He would put things in the dog's food. Like, one time he put pepper in his food and I saw like a trail of pepper going from the thing, innocent enough. But then I saw carpet cleaner, in the dog's food.
No.
So if the dog had eaten that could have been a serious issue.
So the dog was also a target?
Yeah, the dog was. So here's the thing. He did not like anything that took my attention, anything or anyone. If I gave his brother attention, he would find a way to do something so that I'm no longer giving his brother attention. If I give Peanut attention, the dog, he would do something because he didn't like the fact that I gave Peanut attention. He didn't like my deceased husband. If I talked about him, he didn't like that. And so like there, he was vindictive. So there was this one time where he found an old camera that belonged to my deceased husband, and he asked if he could play with it. And I told him no. I said there's some pictures on there that I have not been able to get off yet, and so I
Yeah.
ask you to put it back. When I went to
Right.
I went into the drawer where the camera was. He had opened the camera and poured water into it.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh.
so the behavior started getting more serious. He started doing things. If I wasn't giving him the attention he wanted, he would do something to hurt himself or someone else or something else. Like one time he was eating dinner and I was in the same room with him, but I was folding laundry. And he was like, my face hurts. And I was just like, stop. Let me do laundry. You eat your food, whatever. He was like, you don't even care. You don't even care that my face hurts. When I go over to look at him, he had dug a hole in the side of his face and there's blood dripping down the side of his face. And so, I called DCPMP. I said, something's off. Like, this isn't 5-year-old stuff. There's
Right. Right.
something's going on. And they're like, oh, no, he's 5. Things are happening. Then there was the time where, he decided, and this is going to be a little disgusting, he decided to poop behind his bedroom door so that when I opened the door, it would smear on the carpet. And then I saw that he had peed up and down the wall. And I was just like, okay, all right.
Now, he was doing this to get your attention?
Yeah, he wanted my attention. Again, if I was not giving him the attention, he was looking for a reason to get attention. Then there was an issue, the one that was a little bit more serious. He loves dinosaurs, and so it was COVID. So I was trying to find ways to keep us doing stuff that was fun. And so there was a drive-through dinosaur exhibit in Philly. And so I was like, okay, we're going to love this. So we go to the exhibit and he's looking at all the dinosaurs. He knows them all by name. I mean, I learned so much about dinosaurs. But he knew them all by name. He had a great time. And then that night he comes home and Chris went in to, get him ready for bed, give him a bath, and noticed that his eyes were bleeding. He had literally taken his fingernails and dug them into his eyes to make them bleed.
Ooh.
And I didn't understand. So I called DCPA again and I said, hey, something's going on. I don't know what's happening, but something's off. I think he needs a psych evaluation because something is really off. And again, my calls were ignored, at least not to get the psych eval. It's COVID. You can't really get, any appointments right now, blah, blah, blah. That's what I got. And again, the behaviors then started to escalate. So every time something happened, they would escalate. So at one of his tantrums, he kicked his bedroom door until it broke. So I had to call a contractor to come in, and he came in to fix the door. And while he was fixing the door, Mr. Sweetface kept coming up the stairs and hitting him and messing with him. And at one point, he hit him in an inappropriate area. And so I said, no, you need to come downstairs now. And so he ran from me. He ran into my bathroom. I followed him into the bathroom, and he took the shower door and he slammed it into my head. I almost blacked out. The contractor called Chris and said, you need to come home. Something bad just really happened. And so when I got myself together, I took him downstairs and I said, you hurt me. You could have made me pass out. You could have made me go to the hospital. That was really bad. Do you understand what you did? And he said, I hurt you. And I said, yes, you did. And he said, I'm glad. Very straight face, very no smile.
Wow.
And he was only 5.
It must have been some really deep trauma that he has been through.
Yeah. So he was only 5. And so then that happened. And I kept telling DCPMP again, hey, something's going on. Something's wrong. And so it wasn't until one of the DCPMP law guardians, the lawyer, came over to she just does normally a monthly check-in to just see how, things are going. And because of COVID, they hadn't really been. And so they was like, okay, we're going to start making these appointments again to check in. And so she came to the house to see how things were going. And I said, do me a favor, Mrs. Sweetface. If you go upstairs and let me talk to her, I'll get you a surprise afterwards. And he was like, no, I don't want to go. And I said, come on, she needs to talk to me alone. So I need you to go upstairs. And so he went upstairs. And while I'm talking to her, she yells, you got to move. He has scissors. And he was coming at me, charging at me with a pair of scissors. So at that point, she said, you have to take him to the hospital. He has to go to crisis. And so that's when we ended up at crisis. And that was like the first of like 4 crisis visits. We went to crisis once a month for about a week at a time because he was too young to be left there by himself. So I had to stay there with him. And so I said, so I have to stay with the child that just tried to stab me for in this room. Okay. Understood. You know, um, understood. And the whole time we're there, you know, he's trying to fight me. They actually had security guards from time to time to like, you know, pull him off of me. And, you know, I would record him because there are a few people that he actually listened to. He actually listened to my son Christian, and he actually listened to Mama Angel. And so I would record him and say, okay, I'm sending this to Mama Angel because I need them to see how you're reacting. And so they finally did get him the psych eval. I think, you know, when he dug the fingernails in his eyes, I think that was like August. And I finally got a psych eval sometime in November for him.
November.
For them to, yeah, November. And when he had the psych eval, the report was more on my parenting style rather than the disorder. They told me that I needed to learn nurtured heart approach to learn how to, which is a parenting style for you know treating children with behavioral issues. What they weren't getting is that this wasn't a behavioral issue. This was something more, and so they wanted me to learn nurture heart approach. So they assigned me a therapist to start teaching me to use nurtured heart. So I'm trying to use nurtured heart, the nurtured heart approach, and you know.
And what is the nurtured heart approach? Like what give me an example of that.
So like if he's acting up, you know, whatever, oh, I see that you're having these big emotions. Why don't you tell me what's going on? What are you feeling right now? Are you angry? Do you want to touch the screen and show me what you're feeling right now? And you know, just stuff like that. And I remember one time I was recording him, and you know, he was screaming and yelling, and then he calmed down. I said, oh, I see you've calmed down now. That's great. And he said, are you freaking kidding me? Like, and he's yelling at me like, and again, he's 5, you know, but you know, he's like, why are you being nice to me? Stop being nice to me. And he's literally saying this on the recording, which was incredible to me. So after about 3 different crisis units, I was like, if we keep doing the same thing, nothing's going to change. Something's got to change. And you know, by now he's liking going to the hospital because he gets all the attention of the nurses and everything. So he would do stuff just so that we could go to crisis because he would have me all to himself.
It was all about, it's all about him getting the attention.
Yeah, so he had me all to himself, and he had all of the nurses. So he would always do something. He would say stuff in school. He wanted to grab the school officer's gun and shoot somebody. He wanted to kill himself. He said, one time, I think they sent a note home saying that he said he wanted to kill himself, but he knows that Mama Tina won't let me, or something like that, you know. And so they said, because he seems like he started out, you have to take him back to crisis. And so it was things like that over and over again.
So how long did you continue in this? Like, how long did you keep him, and where is he now?
I think finally they were able to get him put in called a partial hospitalization program. And it took a while to get that because he had to get consent, and the only person that could give consent was his biological father. And at the time, his biological father was not offering consent. And so they had to get consent. So he got into a partial hospitalization program, and it was there that he was diagnosed. There was a clinician who pulled me aside, and she started asking me questions. She said, has he ever acted out after having a fun day? And I thought about the day at the dinosaur exhibit when he jammed the fingernails in his eyes. And I said, yeah. I said, we went to a dinosaur exhibit, and that night he dug his fingernails into his eyes until he bled. And she said, I believe this is what's called reactive attachment disorder. I want you to go home, research it, come back on Monday so we can talk about what that is. And so I went home and I did a Google search on it, and I found the story, A Troubled Child. And that's one of the resources I showed up there.
Yeah. Yes, so, I'll show that. We can talk about the resources in a second.
Yeah, so I
did see that movie.
Yeah, and so I watched it and I cried, because I felt seen for the very first time. I'm not crazy. Like, because at first I thought I was crazy because nobody else was seeing this behavior. This was just me. And so I thought I was crazy. I was the one who didn't know how to parent, a toddler. Like something was wrong with me. And so when I watched The Troubled Child and how, the mother was feeling the same way, like, why is nobody else seeing what this kid is doing to me? I was like, oh my God, I feel seen. And then I went back to, her on Monday to talk. And one thing she said to me was that the nurtured heart approach is the exact opposite thing you want to do with a child with RAD because they're fighting against the love. And so you're trying to be loving and they're fighting you about it.
That's why he was reacting that way. Wow.
And he was and so they were teaching me something that was literally the opposite of what he needed. And so that was eye-opening for us. And so she said, what you need is a RAD therapist, somebody that actually knows what RAD is, who understands what you have to do with them. And with RAD, you have to have just clear rules, clear boundaries, and that's that. Like it's not about being overly loving or trying to, calm them down. Just very clear. No, you can't do that. And then, certain things was you have to hide anything that's like a sharp object. So knives, scissors, I had to put them all in a safe. Like if I needed to cook, I had to go to the safe to get a knife so that I could cook. And whenever he got mad at me, the first thing he would do was go over to the safe and try to see if he could figure out my combination. To the safe. And so you had to put all of those things away. And I had to have cameras everywhere. I couldn't go to the bathroom without having a camera on to see what he's doing because he's always trying to figure out what to do, and the second I don't have my eyes on him was his opportunity to do something. And so it was stressful. I couldn't go, like if the two of us went shopping and I had to go to the bathroom, I would just have to come home because I couldn't go to the bathroom in the store because, if I brought him into the stall with me, he's like, I'm going to run out and just show everybody, and he would try to run out. And I couldn't just leave him out in the middle of the bathroom because he would run out. He would, so I was like, oh, and it was just so stressful. Every day.
That sounds extremely stressful.
Yes, it was extremely stressful.
Not only is it stress in the household, but I'm sure it was stress on your body.
It was.
Internally.
My health started to deteriorate. All of my numbers, diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure, everything. And my doctor said to me, just like on an airplane, you have to put the mask on yourself first before you can help the child. He was like, if you don't help yourself, you're not going to be here to raise this child.
Speaking of that, what was the end result? Because you did adopt the older brother, Chris, but you did not adopt Mr. Sweetface.
Yeah. So
talk about that. How difficult was that decision?
It was a very difficult decision. At one point, Mr. Sweetface was removed from my home and put in a therapeutic foster home. I still was planning to adopt him. So the goal was for me to work with a RAD therapist to teach me how do I parent a child with RAD, because I still loved him. He was still Christian's brother. So I still wanted the two brothers to be together. So everything I could. And then one day the DCPMP adoption worker came to talk to me and she said, Tina, when you adopt this child, all of these services that we give you, therapists, hospital stays, all of that is on you now. You're going to have to find that. You're going to have to find the right therapist, the right counselors, the right residential treatment facilities. If he has to go to one, you're going to have to make sure that he doesn't hurt anybody. And if they do, you could possibly be held liable for that. If he decides that he wants to lie on you to the teachers and say you did something to him, you're the one. You have a job. You're going to have to take time off to be able to go to those hospital stays with him and to do stuff for him and get him if he's in trouble or stuff like that. She said, can you do this? And she said, you don't have to answer me now. Let's think about it. Think about it over the weekend. Let's talk on Monday. And so I think it was Friday night. I dreamed that I was drowning and a friend was on the other side and they held out his hand and said, I got you. Just take my hand. I got you. And that was Friday. Sunday, the praise and worship team was singing this song called Breathe. And I was just crying because that's what I felt like. I felt like I wasn't breathing. I don't even know, how to get through this. And then Bishop got up there after they finished singing Breathe, and he said, sometimes, if the emotions and everything just feels like a wave just trying to overtake you, but take God's hand because he's got you. And I was like, why is he all in my dream? Like, why is he there? And then that afternoon I had sent a post in the support group, and I told them what I was dealing with. I told them the challenges and the question that I posed, and I needed advice. And I got back 55 comments in the support group, not one of them saying to move forward. They said, you are going to get older and weaker, and he is going to get older and stronger. It's not going to get better. And so that didn't help. So then the next day, Mama Angel called me, and she said, do you trust God enough to know that he can take care of him even if you can't? And I was like, okay. So finally I had to accept, I can't raise him. I'm the target.
Right.
And it's not going to change. They said that reactive attachment disorder doesn't automatically get healed. There's not a medication that you can give them to make them stop. They said the best thing you can hope for is that you catch it early enough that you can try some mitigating practices to help the situation, but it doesn't change. There are times where, I've seen Facebook videos where a kid has completely destroyed the home, or, there was another news story about, a child that shot his mom because she wouldn't let him get a virtual reality set. And they were talking about it in our group, and they was like, this at any time can be one of us, in the group. And so I had to make a decision. The only person that opinion that meant the most to me was then my son, Chris, because this is his brother. And so I sat and I talked with him. He was about to go off to college. And he was like, I'm going to be honest. I'm worried about you being home alone with him.
Right.
And so I had to make the decision. I could not move forward with the adoption.
Wow.
It's
It's
very hard decision because I've known the boy since he was 2. So I've loved him since he was 2.
Wow. But it kind of reminds you of that quote that says, I'm in an abusive relationship that I
would never walk away from.
That I would never.
And even now that he's not here, I still want to know that he's okay. I still want to know, like, how is he doing? And then, somebody had to ask me, okay, let's find out. Let's say you find out he's not okay. Are you going to take him back? Are you going to deal with that all over again? Can you raise him? And so I'm stuck because I can't really do anything because I can't raise him. Not if I'm the target all the time.
Exactly. Constantly. And it's affecting your whole mental state.
Yeah.
So
like I couldn't sleep. If he was up, I had to be up. And he would always try to wake up in the middle of the night. So
there are foster mothers, or even, biological mothers. But what are the chances that the foster mothers versus the biological mothers experience a child with RAD? Is the foster
it's higher with a foster parent or an adopted parent?
Higher.
Because usually the reason why that child is no longer with their biological parent is that there was some sort of trauma. And so it's higher. And so that's the nexus of it, and even, the clinician that diagnosed him said, even the very act of just removing the child from the home is traumatizing. So it doesn't have to be a big trauma. It could be just something that happened before that child was 5, before they had the ability to start developing their brain, that causes a trauma. Even at birth, they said if a child is crying and nobody soothes them, nobody picks them up, nobody changes their diaper, those things are traumatic, and those things can cause
trauma.
That's trauma.
Right. That's trauma. So the last, as we start to close up, because I know that we can go on and on about this. Yeah. You need your own hour. In 1 or 2 words, how would you, or I would say in 1 or 2 words, what does invisible but powerful mean to you as you see it reflected in your journey?
sharing it, being able to share
Sharing.
my journey. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, most people never heard of reactive attachment disorder. So the more I share it, the more I can possibly help someone. I did
Right.
try to meet with the commissioner over DCP and P. She reports right into Governor Murphy, Commissioner Byer. And I did have an opportunity to sit with her and just talk to her about RAD. You know, I had put together a whole little presentation because I said, you know, what they need. Like when we become a foster parent, they make you take these classes on what to do as a foster parent. Nobody ever talked about trauma-based disorders. That should be a class.
Right. That should
That
be
should
a
be
class.
something that that should be something that parents hear about so that they can start to recognize it, because the earlier you catch it, the better your outcome. It doesn't change it, but it is a better outcome.
And speaking of that, I have these resources here,
Yeah.
resources that have helped you. These are the resources that helped you to understand the disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were some books. So I read both of those books, Reactive Attachment Disorder, and actually they're both written by this woman, Carrie Williams, and she's actually also the owner of the support group Attached Families. She has, I think she's the owner of Attached Families. She might be. There's another one called Raising Devon, which was the subject of the book, but he spit in my coffee. But she has a support group as well, and so I'm on that. So I may have forgotten to put that one on there. But I read
Okay.
both of those books. Troubled Child was the movie that I first saw that helped me to really understand that I'm not alone, that this is a real thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then I heard about The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. That thing was so traumatizing,
What
because it
what
took me
uh what
right back there. Um, you know, she would, you know, do something, you know, and the father would give her like all kind of accolades, and then she kind of turned and look at the mother like, man, you know, like it was kind of like that, like, and it
Oh
ultimately
wow.
destroyed the marriage. The mother and the father, they ultimately, it destroyed their marriage, and that's
Mm.
what I hear a lot in the support groups about how it's so stressful because the child is putting one against the other, trying to make it seem like it's the mother's fault. And then the support groups. The support groups is really where I got most of my information and knowledge. And I find it so strange that all of our stories were so similar. Like every time
Right.
somebody's, you know, telling one of their stories, I'm like, I remember not, I remember something like that. I remember when he did that. And it's if it wasn't happening to me, and if it wasn't so scary that it was happening to me, this would be like a great paper that I would want to write about because it was so interesting, but it was happening to me, you know?
This is also another book. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
thinking of that, you know, hint, 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 wink, wink. Um, but yeah, so these support groups, are they all on Facebook even, or is it Rad Advocates? That's a
Yeah,
website.
there are Rat Advocates, that's a website. And then the rest of them are
Okay.
on Facebook. They were
Or
Facebook. And most
Facebook.
of them are private, so that you could feel free to share your stories without other people seeing it. So they're private groups.
Okay. All right. Well, wow. This has been very enlightening. I know you told me the story before, but I just, it's still unbelievable all that you went through in
Mm-hmm.
that short amount of time. And it
Mm-hmm.
was every day. It was
Every day.
daily.
There was no break. There was
Oh,
never a break. And he was so
wow.
smart. That was the thing. And it was just like, God, I wish you would use your smarts to not do this stuff. Like, you know,
Right.
like I put a bell over his door, like a you know, jingle bell or whatever. So whenever he would open and close the door, I could hear it. And he was like, why is
Mm-hmm.
there a bell over my door? And I said, well, yeah, because I want to, you know, hear you when you come out your room. He was like, you're not going to outsmart me.
Ooh.
I was like, he's five. Like, you got to remind yourself, he's five.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, Tina. So you kind of, you know, dodged a bullet there. It would have
It's
gotten worse, just like
it's
they
a bit,
said.
I know it's a
Yeah.
bitter sweet bullet because again, my heart loves him. And
Yes.
I always said that my superpower and my kryptonite is my love. Like I can love like no other. And then sometimes I love so hard I don't know when to let go.
And that's the ultimate thing is, you know, as a mother, even as a foster mother, when you're parenting a special needs child, sometimes you just really have to relinquish, give it to
Mm-hmm.
God. And that kind of gives some relief, because it's like, you can't do it all.
Yeah.
You can't do it all. And you're going to have to allow him to handle it, and just trust. I really appreciate you coming on again and talking about a different topic, talking about your challenges, what you face a little bit in more detail.
Yeah.
And we will talk again, I'm sure.
All
right. But thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I can't wait to see it.
Do you ever feel like you're navigating a whole new world, especially when your child has special needs? In my own experience, I've learned that the power of community, empathy, and sharing stories can make an incredible difference. That's exactly why I host this monthly IBP chat session. This is a space environment for women, for mothers, caregivers, educators. We exchange experience, and we also back it up with scripture. We meet monthly on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Take a look at this promo.
Do you ever feel like you're carrying life's weight on your shoulders? At the IBP monthly chat, you don't have to do it alone. This is your space. A space where real women come together to share, connect, and encourage each other. Whether you're navigating challenges, seeking clarity, or simply craving authentic connection, the IBP monthly chat is where faith and friendship meet. We meet virtually on Zoom, and each session is a safe place to open your heart and discuss God's word as it relates to our lives. Here, you'll find strength, understanding, and the reminder that you are never alone. Scan the QR code to subscribe and be notified of our next session. Let's grow together, one conversation at a time.
Welcome back to the Invisible but Powerful Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Kiner, and I thank you all for joining us on this special episode, Mothering Extraordinary Children. I hope that today's stories remind you that no matter how different the journey, you're never alone. Whether you're a mother or a foster parent who's caring for and supporting a child with special needs, your work, your love, and your sacrifice are far from invisible. Always keep in mind that you are shaping a brighter future for these amazing children. Don't forget to join our live chat via Zoom right after this episode to speak with these amazing mothers. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and continue to be blessed and a blessing.
Thank you for spending this time with us on the Invisible but Powerful Show. We'd love to connect with you beyond the show. Follow us on Facebook at Invisible but Powerful Ministries, on Instagram at IBP Ministries, and subscribe to our IBP Ministries YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Until next time, remember to uncover, unlock, and unleash the potential within you. Walk boldly in who and whose you are.